March 25, 2020, dawned quietly over Horseshoe Lake, Arkansas. The first light crept across the water, painting the surface with gentle gold and silver hues. It was the kind of morning that promised peace, the kind that made the world seem untouched by trouble. The water was still, the air calm, but inside the historic Snowden house, an ominous silence lingered. The grand old mansion, usually filled with the echoes of laughter and the warmth of hospitality, felt different that morning, heavy, as if holding its breath. Martha McKay, beloved caretaker of her family's legacy, wasn't answering her phone. Calls went unanswered, texts unread. For those who knew her, this was more than unusual. It was alarming. Friends and family felt a familiar dread. Something was wrong. The sense of unease grew with every passing minute, as loved ones exchanged worried glances and tried to convince themselves it was just a misunderstanding. A call went out to the Crittenden County Sheriff's Department. The dispatcher's calm voice belied the urgency in the caller's tone, as the community's worst fears began to take shape. Deputies arrived at the estate, a place steeped in both beauty and tragedy. The Snowden house, with its sweeping porches and storied past, had seen its share of sorrow, but nothing like this. Inside, they found signs of a violent struggle. Furniture was overturned, glass shattered, and the air was thick with the aftermath of chaos. Martha McKay, 63, was dead, not by natural causes but by violence. The loss was immediate and profound, echoing through the halls she had worked so hard to restore. The news stunned the tight-knit community. Horseshoe Lake was the kind of place where everyone knew each other, where neighbors were more like family, and tragedy felt personal. Martha was known for her kindness, her Buddhist faith, and her capacity for forgiveness. She radiated a gentle strength, always seeking peace even in the face of hardship. Her death felt senseless, personal, and deeply unsettling. It was as if the very heart of the community had been wounded, leaving a void that could not be filled. The community mourned not just a friend, but the loss of an ideal, her belief in moving forward and finding light after darkness. Vigils were held, candles flickered in the night, and stories of Martha's compassion were shared in hushed voices. The Snowden house, once a symbol of resilience, was now a crime scene. Its stately columns and manicured lawns could not hide the pain that now haunted its rooms. Martha had opened her home to others, sharing its beauty and history. She welcomed strangers and friends alike, believing that the house could be a place of healing and connection. Her violent death inside those walls felt like a violation of the sanctuary she'd rebuilt. The sense of safety she had fostered was shattered in an instant. The lake seemed to hold its breath, as if mourning with the community. Even nature itself seemed subdued, the usual chorus of birds and insects replaced by a heavy, respectful silence. The story of forgiveness that defined Martha's life had taken a tragic, unimaginable turn. Memories of happier days flickered in the minds of those left behind, now tinged with sorrow. And as details emerged, a name from the past would resurface, connecting this tragedy to an old, unhealed wound. The community braced itself, knowing that the story was far from over and that the shadows of the past were about to return. To understand the horror of 2020, we must go back to 1996. That year, Martha's mother, Sally Snowden McKay, and her cousin, Lee Baker, were brutally murdered in a nearby house on the same property. The crime shocked the Memphis and Arkansas communities. The killer was a teenager, Travis Lewis, just 19. He broke in, was confronted, and the encounter turned deadly. Lewis confessed and was sentenced to life in prison. The case seemed closed, but the family's pain was immeasurable. Martha lost her mother to violence, and the land she loved was forever changed. Most would have left, but Martha stayed. She faced the memories, refusing to let tragedy define her. The murder of her mother became a turning point, not for vengeance, but for something few could understand. Martha's journey would become one of empathy and forgiveness. The story of Travis Lewis was not over. His connection to the McKay family would return in ways no one could have predicted. The echoes of that nightmare lingered in every corner of the Snowden estate. The past was never truly past, and for Martha, it would shape everything that followed. Years slipped by, each one marked by the slow, relentless passage of time. The world outside changed, but for Martha, the ache of loss remained ever present, woven into the fabric of her days. Martha lived with her grief, carrying it quietly through daily routines. Meanwhile, Travis Lewis sat in prison, his life defined by concrete walls and the weight of his crime. Guided by her Buddhist faith, Martha began to see Lewis not as a monster but as a human being, flawed, yes, but not beyond hope. She meditated on compassion, searching for understanding in a world that demanded anger. She reached out to him, writing letters not with bitterness, but with a gentle curiosity. Her words offered a bridge, an invitation to dialogue rather than judgment. Martha wanted to understand what led him to that dark place, to see the person behind the act. She asked questions, listened to his story, and tried to find meaning in the pain. Over time, her belief in second chances grew stronger. She saw forgiveness not as forgetting, but as a way to break the cycle of suffering, for herself, for Lewis, and for everyone touched by tragedy. In a bold move, Martha publicly supported his parole, standing before a room of strangers and speaking on his behalf at his hearing in 2018. Her words were steady, her conviction clear. Her forgiveness shocked many, friends, family, even strangers. But her testimony was powerful, a testament to the strength it takes to choose mercy over vengeance. Against the wishes of others, Travis Lewis was granted parole after 23 years behind bars. He stepped into the world a free man, carrying the weight of Martha's hope for his redemption. Martha believed she had honored her mother's memory not with vengeance but with mercy. She hoped her choice would bring peace to her own heart, and perhaps inspire others to consider forgiveness. She hoped her act of compassion would lead to healing for all involved, that it might ripple outward and soften the pain that lingered in her community. It was a radical, deeply personal choice, one that few could fathom. Martha knew forgiveness would not erase the past, but it could shape the future. She believed she was closing a painful chapter in her life, and in doing so, helping Lewis begin a new one. For both of them, it was a chance to start again. But the story was not over. The future remained uncertain, and the consequences of her choice were still unfolding. The final chapter was yet to be written. Martha could only hope that her act of forgiveness would lead to something good. Yet, as storm clouds gathered, she sensed that her decision would have consequences no one could foresee. The weight of uncertainty pressed in. The risk she took was immense, a leap of faith into the unknown. She wondered if she had done the right thing, and the cost would be greater than anyone imagined. The echoes of the past were not so easily silenced. Martha's faith in redemption would be put to the ultimate test. As new challenges emerged and old wounds threatened to reopen, the cycle of violence was not yet broken, and the true cost of forgiveness was only beginning to reveal itself. After Lewis's release, Martha poured herself into life at the Snowden house. She restored the mansion, hosting weddings and events, determined to fill it with joy. The house became her sanctuary, a place of hope and healing. Martha's forgiveness of Lewis freed her from anger, or so she believed. She offered him encouragement as he tried to rebuild his life. To Martha, the story had reached its conclusion. She had chosen light over darkness, believing the cycle of violence was broken. But the past lingered, a shadow over every conversation, every visitor's question. Was her forgiveness brave, or dangerously naive? Martha seemed at peace, but the weight of history was heavier than she knew. The community watched, some with admiration, others with concern. Martha believed she could finally live in peace, but the past was not finished with her. The story was not yet done. The consequences of her compassion were about to unfold, and the cost would be devastating. March 25, 2020, began like any other quiet morning at the Snowden house, a stately mansion steeped in history and shadowed by old secrets. But that calm was shattered when the security alarm blared through the halls, echoing off the antique walls and waking the ghosts of the past. A sheriff's deputy arrived quickly, responding to the alarm. He found the front door ajar, an unusual sight for such a grand home. Yet, as he walked through the silent rooms, nothing seemed out of place. No signs of forced entry, no immediate evidence of trouble. Satisfied that all was well, the deputy left, never realizing that a tragedy was already unfolding behind those walls, a tragedy that would soon shock the entire community. As the hours passed, friends and family grew increasingly anxious. Martha McKay, the heart and soul of Snowden House, wasn't answering her phone. Calls went straight to voicemail, and messages were left unread. A sense of dread began to settle in. Fearing the worst, someone called 911 again, this time pleading for an urgent welfare check. The dispatcher's voice was tense, the request relayed with a sense of urgency that hadn't been there before. When deputies returned, they were met with chaos. A man was seen fleeing the property, sprinting across the lawn toward the cold waters of Horseshoe Lake. That man was Travis Lewis, the very person Martha had once forgiven for a crime committed decades earlier. His presence at the house was as shocking as it was ominous. Ignoring desperate shouts from deputies, Lewis plunged into the frigid lake, swimming further and further from shore. The water was icy, the current strong. He refused to turn back, and soon, he disappeared beneath the surface, drowning before anyone could reach him. With Lewis gone, deputies turned their attention back to the house, searching every shadowy corner with growing apprehension. Upstairs in a quiet bedroom, they found Martha McKay. She had been stabbed, the victim of a violent confrontation that echoed the horrors of the past. The nightmare that had haunted Snowden House years before had returned, repeating itself with chilling, almost unbelievable symmetry. The man Martha had once helped free, believing in redemption and second chances, had come back to the very place where his original crime had been committed. The past, it seemed, had claimed another victim, leaving the community in shock and sorrow. The people of Horseshoe Lake gathered outside the house, struggling to comprehend the horror that had unfolded in their midst. Grief and disbelief mingled in the air. Martha's act of forgiveness, once seen as a beacon of hope, had ended in unimaginable tragedy. The letter she wrote, the olive branch she extended, now seemed heartbreakingly futile. The cycle of violence, which so many had hoped was broken, had instead come full circle, leaving only pain and unanswered questions in its wake. Now a heavy silence hung over Horseshoe Lake, a silence filled with grief, disbelief, and the echoes of a story that refused to fade. The story of Snowden House had come full circle, ending in devastation and sorrow, its legacy forever changed. For those who knew Martha, the question of why would linger, haunting their thoughts and conversations for years to come. And as the days passed, the answers remained elusive, lost in the shadows of Snowden House and the stillness of Horseshoe Lake. The investigation revealed a brutal struggle inside the Snowden house. Martha had fought for her life. The murder weapon, a knife, was found at the scene. Near her body, a canvas bag held Travis Lewis's wallet, his presence undeniable. Evidence in the kitchen suggested Lewis had been there for some time, possibly even the night before. Did Martha let him in, trusting him once again? The betrayal was almost incomprehensible. The autopsy confirmed multiple stab wounds. The violence was shocking. Lewis's body was recovered from the lake. He had drowned, carrying some of Martha's belongings. Robbery was a possible motive, but it felt deeply personal. The man Martha had forgiven had returned to kill her. Her sanctuary had become the scene of her final tragic act of compassion. The story was now one of trust shattered, kindness repaid with violence. The community struggled to process the depth of the betrayal. The cycle of violence had repeated itself in the most heartbreaking way. The Snowden house stood as a silent witness to a story of compassion and cruelty colliding. With Travis Lewis dead, his motives died with him. Was it robbery, desperation, or something darker? Some believe he saw Martha as an easy target, struggling after prison. Others wonder if he resented her kindness, or was haunted by guilt he couldn't escape. Perhaps he was simply drawn back to the place that defined his life, a return to the scene of his first crime. Theories abound, but no answer satisfies. The why lingers over the Snowden house in Horseshoe Lake. Martha believed in his capacity for change, but his final act suggests he never truly left the darkness behind. The question of why will haunt this story forever. Some mysteries are never solved. Martha McKay's story forces us to ask, is there a limit to forgiveness, or can compassion truly conquer all? Her decision to forgive was an act of profound grace, but it came with undeniable risk and uncertainty. Some see her as a symbol of hope and resilience, others as a cautionary tale about trust. The debate over second chances and public safety rages on, stirring strong emotions in the community. Martha's compassion was noble, but in the end it cost her everything she held dear. Her story lives in the gray area between hope and caution, where answers are never simple. Forgiveness can heal deep wounds, but it offers no guarantees of safety or peace. Martha bet on redemption, and lost more than she could have imagined. Her legacy is a reminder: forgiveness is powerful, but not always safe for everyone. The past cannot always be rewritten, no matter how much we wish it could. Martha McKay is remembered for her kindness, her spirit, and her belief in second chances. Friends recall her laughter, her love for Horseshoe Lake, and her search for peace. Her story is now part of local folklore, a haunting tale of compassion and tragedy. The Snowden house stands as both a monument to her resilience and a reminder of violence. Martha's legacy is complex, forever linked to the man she forgave. For those who loved her, the focus remains on her life, not her death. She's remembered as a woman of strength and conviction. Her story is one of light and darkness, hope and heartbreak. The story of Horseshoe Lake offers no easy comfort. The past is never truly past, it can return with devastating force. Martha's compassion was pure, but forgiveness and trust are not the same. Her act of mercy made her vulnerable to the very person she tried to save. The tragedy challenges our beliefs about redemption and second chances. Sometimes, the cycle of violence is not broken by kindness. Martha's story is a heartbreaking reminder that good intentions are not always enough. The silence over the Snowden house is now one of loss and unanswered questions. Martha McKay's life was a testament to hope, but her death a warning. The lesson of Horseshoe Lake is an unsettling one, about the enduring power of the past and the unpredictable nature of forgiveness. Some stories end not with redemption, but with a final, brutal betrayal.